I see a lot of people confused about it, just like we were at some point. Maybe we should make a video about it. What do you say? Good, because the camera's running, so we should start. Alright. What's up, everybody? It's Adrian here. Welcome to another Artist vs. Camera episode. Today is March the 27th of 2026. It's a beautiful Friday, and I'm fasting because it's Friday, and I've done this for a long time now. 6 meals per week, just a single meal per day, except on Fridays, which is no calories. So, we're in the middle of Great Lent, actually approaching the end of it, which leads to Pascha, and that's precisely what I wanted to talk about today. It has to do with some confusion that I seemingly perceived from a lot of people around me. What struck me the most was to see myself reflected in those people, because I was once in their same position, confused about this. In my case, it was even worse, because I wasn't just confused, I was mocking the practice, not only questioning it, but resenting the ones who do it, because it didn't make any sense to me. Most people don't know what Great Lent is, and I just wanted to clarify all of that. Some common misconceptions that I've been hearing is about starvation, or it's crazy that you guys eat no food for so many days, and I'm like, what are you talking about? We eat food every day, right? It's not about punishment or some extreme diet, it's much more simpler than that. The confusion I see, especially even from people who are inside Christianity, right, is that they don't even know their own practices. They hear about Great Lent and think about it as some distant thing that people do in other cultures or other traditions, even other religions. And it's quite surprising to hear them mistaking it with some different practices. But that doesn't come from ignorance, it comes from simply not being familiar with it. I've been that guy for a long time. I used to mock it. I used to laugh at people who engage in such practices because I regarded it through a lens of logic that was entirely disconnected from the spiritual, and I simply thought that it was nonsense. I thought that the human body has to nurse itself with tons of different foods, and you don't get to decide when we eat what. Again, I see myself in them because at one point I deeply questioned it, especially food that is in a way essential, like meat and dairy and all that stuff. That's how I used to see it. So I guess it was a mix of rejection of authority and a rebellious type of behavior. But yeah, that was 14-year-old Adrian. That was 27-year-old Adrian. Growing up, I never embraced fasting or anything like that because I thought, bro, you should never deprive yourself from anything, right? If you want to sleep, you sleep. If you want pleasure, you get pleasure. If you want food, you get food with no restrictions. But something deep inside of me told me that there's something I'm not understanding about this, and some other people, like my parents, like my dad specifically, do get about this. So what is it? Why am I missing it? And something clicked in my late 20s when I embraced fasting, but for different reasons. It was never for religious or spiritual reasons. It was plain biological and physical stuff. I thought that I was fasting for health and for discipline and all that stuff. Little did I know that I was slowly tapping into something that would condition me, paving the way for this beautiful chapter in my life. That rejection was actually fueled by not understanding it correctly. And that's what made me kind of distance myself from the practice, even though I saw it all around me. People in my life practice this, and I've always questioned it. I've always been like, what's the point? It betrays all sorts of logic, biology and health and all that stuff. I don't see the point in suffering like that. Why? You have all this food available. Why not eat it? And I see myself reflected in so many people nowadays who are in that exact same position. They think that Great Lent is about depriving yourself from food, that Great Lent is about starving, but that's not what Great Lent is about. Great Lent is a period of depriving yourself from the things that prevent you from making progress and growing spiritually. And what do you know? That spiritual growth also translates to the flesh. It's something that I like to discuss here because it's multi-layered, and the body affects the mind, right? So if I tame my body, I will finally tame my mind, which is where all those cravings sit. But then what I realized is that the mind is what affects the soul, freeing it. When I remove stuff from my body, all these desires, all these foods, and all these things that I firmly believed that I needed in my life, that's when my soul started to finally breathe. It's why I had this massive awakening in the last decade. So, in my case, I grew up around it, but I never embraced it because I was a kid. And kids, pregnant ladies, and elders are not necessarily required to do that. Everyone else is expected to, because Jesus didn't say, if you fast, he said, when you fast. So it's not optional. Fasting is expected. And honestly, it's something that I wish more people tapped into. And if we get to the core of what Great Lent is basically a 40-day preparation for Pascha, which is Easter. So this is the period of time during which we repent, we abstain from pleasure, from all kinds of passions of the flesh and all that stuff. But it's not random either. It's part of a calendar. And that calendar starts on Clean Monday and it ends on the day of resurrection. The beauty of this is that Great Lent is tied to Pascha, the Easter, right? It's the 40 days that precede the crucifixion, the death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. That's what we celebrate on that day. I can definitely see why people would resist the idea because it feels oppressing. It feels like, why would you deprave me of food? Why would you deprave me of my music and my movies and my games and, my vices and all that stuff? And honestly, when we spend so much time swimming in poison, it becomes our norm. It becomes a standard. And that polluted air can feel addicting. It feels addictive because we learned to turn it into our home when we actually don't belong there. I just wanted to say that people get mad when you remove stuff, especially when that stuff is basically poison. So if I take away your cigarettes, you're going to be like, you're such a madman, like, why treat me this way? Let me have my cigarettes. And I'm like, no, because they're bad for you. Oh, that's your opinion. And I'm like, no, it's not my opinion. Drop your addictions, your vices, the things you normally cling on to, taking advantage of this period of time of repentance, deep reflection. Simply tap into what makes you free. Drop those chains. Now expand that to many other things, like scrolling all day, doing no exercise, eating garbage, and you get pretty much an accurate equation for today's lifestyle. This is like an antidote to that poison. That's why I mentioned that you don't choose when to start this. You simply take part in the practice. And just to explain the calendar in simple terms, the date changes every year. Yes. Why? Because this is based on Pascha. And the Orthodox, for example, use a Julian calendar and the Catholics a Gregorian calendar. At the end of the day, it's an ancient structure. It's not just personal choice, The rules are very simple also, by the way. You basically become a vegan for 40 plus days. In the Catholic tradition, you basically skip Sundays and you're allowed to have some of those foods. And by the way, this is not a video about the differences between Catholic and Orthodox. It's basically just a quick piece of information that I'm giving because it's also something I was deeply fascinated by and I wanted to learn exactly why. Why Catholics don't fast as strictly as Orthodox? Well, in the Orthodox tradition, you have no meat, no dairy during the entire thing, except I think 1 or 2 days, which is when you can actually have fish and oil. Oil is actually permitted on weekends, but you have no meat, no dairy, no eggs, mostly no fish. Oil and wine are restricted. And of course, you can eat every day and you can eat as much food as you want. You're not limited to anything except the ingredients themselves. So quantity is not the focus. It's more about the content. Now, why food? Why food? Why not something else? Well, you see, the food part is the surface. That's the surface level of all of this. It's about reducing noise. This is not about food. Food is basically the entry point. The change is internal, yeah? So that's the real fast. It's internal. And you basically aim for less noise. And by noise, I don't mean like things that audibly make noise in your ears. I mean noise in a metaphorical way. Noise can be anything that actually provides no order to your picture. Think of noise and sound. It's chaotic, right? Same thing we can find in our lives given the lifestyles in the modern world. So by embracing this practice, you get less craving, less distractions, and you somehow build more clarity. You become more aware. You're more in control. So when the body releases its grip on the soul can finally move. Think about it as you standing in the middle of a bunch of fires, yeah? Those flames consume oxygen. You can breathe less. You think, well, but I gotta stay warm. You've got like 12 fires around you, and you likely don't need all of them because they prevent you from breathing. And in this analogy, you're supposed to put out a few of them, which is kind of like emulating a sacrifice. You're supposed to give up some stuff just to gain something else, which is oxygen. Because that fire is consuming the very oxygen that you need to keep you warm. But do you actually have to be that warm? You don't. That's how I see us living in the modern world, in the fallen world. We abuse most of the abundance that we've got and we let it drive our lives. And that's what clouds our judgment and causes all sorts of imbalances in our lives. Great Lent is a perfect time for us to recalibrate and to find balance again. Removing that richness reduces that noise that we talked about. And if Lent removes that intensity, you return to simplicity. Too many fires, no oxygen. They're just basically suffocating you. So you're asphyxiating in that indulgence. But Lent removes that excess and you can finally breathe. So in case that's too hard to understand, think about it in terms of clothing. You have 3 t-shirts, just a pair of shorts, and just a single pair of shoes. That's it. You don't need any more than that. But when you have so many options to choose from, they take up a ton of space in your mind, right? Every day you have to spend a few minutes thinking of the combinations, of like which one goes better with which. That just generates more noise. Apply that to food and you get the same thing. Apply it to any other practices, like showing up at the gym and having 100 machines to work out with. Like you don't even know what to start with. But if you only have like 2 or 3 of them, dude, then you're playing the game in creative mode, basically. So it's a way to stimulate your acceptance of something simple. Because we grow so used to needing so many things all the time that we eventually forget it's never about how many more things we can put on, but how many things we can remove without that identity dissolving. I speak from my own experience here. I speak from a place where I used to be so crowded in my mind with which video to watch, which food to eat, which dish to prepare, when to consume each thing. But now it's just simple. Is it Friday? Okay, then no food. But that's just me. I do it very, very strictly. But the difference between what I used to do in the past with all that biological fasting and stuff, like, no, I only eat once a day. I only eat this type of food. I had no structure. I had no order. But now this frames it in a way that matches a higher cosmic order, right? It's not just my order, local. It's global. It's universal. It's something that aligns with something bigger than myself. I can't believe I didn't realize before, but in a way, I'm glad that I did now. And last year was my first Great Lent. This year is the second one. It's like every year you go through a different level of understanding. It's like you learn a little more every time, right? Every year. Not only with this, but with anything in life. And I'm not here to dictate rules. I'm just here to explain the way I perceived it, the way I understood it, and the way I'm practicing it. So we're on week 5. For example, today, Friday. I fast on Fridays fully. I have 0 calories on Fridays. I've been doing this for a couple of years now, consistently, like every single Friday. And I notice how when I remove food from my mind, not only from my body, from my mind also, suddenly life becomes a lot more simple. I no longer have to spend time thinking what my next meal will be, what possible ingredient combinations I'm gonna use. So I can just simply enjoy life in a quiet way, which is so beautiful. It deeply impacts not only your mood, but your motivations, your clarity. You suddenly see things much more clear. If you're under medical treatment or if you have some conditions of any kind, then what people usually say is that you should always consult with your priest. Don't take it from a dude that talks about it online like me, right? I'm just a man, just a guy talking about his experience. But like I said before, I don't speak on behalf of I'm no authority. It's just me sharing what I've learned. My strict practice, for example, no animal products whatsoever. Now we're talking about my specific case. I eat nothing that comes from an animal, nothing that comes from some being who had to be alive and then had to die in order for me to eat their carcass. Does that make sense? Because technically you're allowed to have seafood, for example, but that to me just reads as like living beings, so I'm not having them. So what do I eat then? Well, I eat legumes, vegetables, fruit, dried fruit, nuts and seeds. There's a ton of stuff, but this is only something that I realized after removing that noise that I thought I needed so much. And dude, don't even get me started on that because it's an entire episode on its own. But it basically goes like me thinking about what to cook, what to eat, It's a mess. It's mental space that you give away for free, just like that. So that's why I look forward to seasons like Great Lent or the Nativity Fast, because I know for a fact I'm going to see so many improvements. And here's an example from my Garmin watch. Basically, the red dots at the bottom was my HRV, my heart rate variability. So it was going very low, which suggests strain in the body, even sickness or stress, inflammation and stuff. And I did have that. I could feel it. As you could see, it went up and stabilized as soon as I tapped into this practice. It was formidable. So again, I do nothing that comes from an animal. That means no cheese, no milk, no eggs, no bacon, no meat of any kind, no fish either, and certainly no crab, no shrimp, octopus, or anything like that. Even though those things are actually consumed because they're technically allowed due to the fact that they don't have a spine and they don't have blood. So they're considered compatible, even though I don't do it because of the things I already mentioned. Plus, I don't like them anyway. So theologically, that makes sense. Even though logically, to me at least, I don't buy it. Because if I'm abstaining from anything that had to die in order for me to eat it, then I'm not having it. That's the logic I use. If you're extending this to vegetables, for example, which is what I do eat, I eat vegetables, I eat legumes, nuts and seeds, and some forms of grain, though I'm staying away from wheat because it's linked to bread. And I don't eat bread in Great Lent, not because it contains any animal byproducts, but because it's usually leavened. It has yeast, and yeast is a growth agent. And that same growth agent is akin to pride. It puffs you up. It's precisely something we abstain from. Yeah, no bread for me, and that also simplifies things even more, right? It's about removing noise. It's not about adding more options or negotiating which things work and which things don't. Almond milk, avocado oil, or coconut milk, rice milk, or anything like that, soy milk. It's an imitation of the very thing I'm abstaining from in the first place. So of course I'm going to avoid it, right? Honey, another issue. Like it's a byproduct from animals like bees. I'm not having that. Sugar. What's wrong with sugar? Well, it's indulgence. I love it and I won't have it. So no sweets, no cake, no nothing. I don't care if it's not made with dairy or anything that comes from an animal. No cake for Adrian. So the only sugar I basically allow myself to have is fruit or dried fruit, like dates, figs, dried figs, bananas, apples. I don't know, the simple stuff, dude. Like, it's not that complicated. See, this is what I'm talking about. You stop trying to negotiate options when you don't have them. That's why I feel so compelled to put them aside for this period, because then I free up a lot of space in my mind and I no longer have to be like doing calculations. Wait, is this allowed? Where does this come from? Is this technically allowed but not canonically allowed? I'm not sure. Like, bro, put all this stuff away. I don't want to see it anymore until Great Lent is over. You know, that's basically how I think. So this thing I just mentioned is personal to me, right? This is not required. This is not how you should do it. If you're interested in any of this, just consult your priest, because that's what people say, you know, like everybody recommends you to just check in with your priest or ask someone who's qualified for this kind of stuff. Don't take it from me. I'm just a guy talking on the internet, you know. But while the church gives you a baseline, I do it more strictly, for those reasons I already mentioned. Again, just to recap a little bit, it's not about starvation, it's not about suffering on purpose or punishment or oppression. It's not simply denial for the sake of denial. Yeah, this is an opportunity. To me, at least, it's a gift. I was looking forward to this the same way someone looks up to drinking a drop of water after drifting away through the desert for ages on ages. Seriously, my friends know it because they asked me, Adrian, Great Lent is coming. Are you excited? And I'm like, dude, I need it. So you don't need as much as you think you do. I already made an episode on this. You could check it out if you want. Because you think you need it. You know, it's like some sort of, I don't know, like an addiction of some kind. I had to get rid of all my cravings, and it's basically about less is more. You quiet the body so that the soul can move. In case it's not clear enough yet, I do not represent the church. I'm not speaking on behalf of the Catholic or the Orthodox or any other religious organization out there. I'm just a man speaking from his own self-reflections and experience, and I'm here to share these personal findings with you guys. I hope you like it. I encourage you to explore, of course. I encourage you to ask, to learn, to always go back to the source. Yeah? Go read the Word of God. Trust Jesus. Don't take it from me, from a random dude online. Go do what your heart dictates you to do. Again, Great Lent is more like preparation instead of deprivation. Even though we emulate the 40 days in the wilderness that Jesus went through and faced many temptations, just like we are doing, I just simply hope that you guys found this useful. I hope that you know a little more about Great Lent now, and I hope that it basically sparked some curiosity in you to go find out some more about this. So thank you guys for watching. I'll catch up on the next one, but until then, let's keep learning, keep growing, keep improving. It's who we are. It's what we do. Bye-bye, guys. God bless. And happy fasting. Should I say that at the end? I don't know. I just wanted to end it in something cool. But yeah, enjoy, guys.